University of the District of Columbia. I'm Allyn Johnson, the Director of Jazz Studies here at the university. Thank you for coming. And this is another edition of Meet the Artist on the Bandstand. And this afternoon, my guest is a former student here. He's from New Jersey, and from Plainfield, New Jersey. Plainfield, New Jersey. Woodwind man, Mr. Anthony Nelson. I say woodwind because he doesn't only just play saxophone, plays an array of woodwinds. So it's my pleasure to have him. And before we talk a bit, we like to play. And Anthony's he's brought some original music, and I guess he's gonna let me know what he wants to do. To God. Composition entitled To God. Since I am a professor, I guess I can make this an educational moment. If you ever experience a jazz concert or jazz musicians, how they communicate and deal with music, sometimes you know that we get music that we've never played before. And we may have seen it, but somebody just sends you some charts, and hopefully you can get through it on the gig. So this is what's happening right now. So, I'm gonna need God right now. Beautiful to God. Well, since we're here, let's talk about your, I guess, your process of composition. Do you have some type of, what is your process for composing, I guess? Or is there a process or processes?
I'm thinking, what did Alan Johnson do? Well, I don't know. I used to think I had a method, and then I realize now that it comes in different ways. So sometimes I might have an idea that I have in my head. I might have a theory that I'm trying to work out harmonically, and that'll lead me somewhere. And I say, oh, okay, so you could do that. Or sometimes I'm going over one of my piano lessons that I got from over here. I mean, to be honest with you, I like to go back. I mean, you know, Peyton Manning going into his first Super Bowl, the one he actually won. He said, that's funny, he won his first and his last. That's funny, too. But what he said was that when he's nervous, he goes back to the basics. That's how he handles stress. So I go back to the basics even when I'm not nervous because that's what they're there for. They're there to refresh you. And so sometimes I'm really big into James Williams, and I've never heard anyone manipulate bass movement the way he does. You know what I'm talking about.
Well, I steal from James, so.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? It's like, and so I think when I was composing this, I said, man, how many other ways can I do this, you know? Well, and I was trying to write saxophone voicing. I was really writing this as I really had in my mind a saxophone choir, not with a reed as hard as this one, dear God. But I had a saxophone choir in my head, and so the way I was voicing the melody, I said, yeah, this is the way I would do the saxophone. Mm-hmm. And then it ended up sticking. So yeah, leave that note in the bass, and let's see. Oh, can we walk it down? And it reminded me of like one of the lessons Jones gave me. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes it's just an idea. Sometimes it's just what I hear. You know, there's always some path to getting to where you need to get to, and you don't always. Sometimes you can't always define it.
Well, yeah, I can you know, see what you're talking about, because that happens to me also, where I'll come across an idea and, you know, it may not fit, you know, a certain chord or something like that, and I'll just, you know, I'll keep it, you know, just because it's a sound, you know. Yeah, sound, yeah. Speaking of James Williams, you spent some time with him at, did you go to William Patterson for a minute, or?
I did transfer to William Patterson, but literally what happened was, and this is God's not truth, I don't know if I ever told any of you this story, but and this is the way God works, you know, he's miraculous in this, and that I auditioned for William Patterson before I came to UDC, and in the back of my mind I said, well, wait a second, Calvin Jones and Bruce is always talking about Dr. Leroy Barton. And he's like, you know, they got that program down there. But I said, but I could stay in New Jersey and keep on doing everything I'm doing, you know. And I auditioned for William Patterson, and I didn't hear back from them. And it wasn't, and I got a phone call from somebody saying, hey, you know, mind you, we heard that we got your audition tape. We wanted to know if you were coming. You know, I was like, well, I already accept. I'm moving to DC. I'm going to UDC. And what I find out years later is I had transferred. I got some other gigs that made it necessary for me to move back to New Jersey because, you know, they weren't going to pay for me to go back and forth. I found out. I'm speaking to Dr. David Dempsey, and he said, man, when James Williams heard your audition tape, he said, man, get this guy as soon as possible. Get him in here. But somebody dropped the ball. And it worked out better for me in the end.
That's what we like to hear.
Well, it's only the truth.
James, yeah.
It's only the truth. I mean, I got to meet James a few times on other gigs before I moved here, but I got there in time because he actually died just like right after I said, okay, I'm moving up there. He passes away, but Who did they get to replace him?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
They got his homeboy, right. Mo Miller, to replace him.
Right.
So, you know, I said, okay, I didn't get James, but I'm going to get some Mo Brew. And, you know, so that was, he made me think about things differently. I remember once he said to me, I had to do a jury, you know, and they'd have you learn like 3 or 4 tunes, and they would pick out which one they wanted you to do. Yeah, take notes. And, we get, you know, you remember how many tunes Jones had us learning, so truth is I took some of those tunes up there. But anyway, right? Because no one else was doing them, you know, it's like some gems that no one else was playing. Right. So I took those up there, and in my first jury, Mo Brew says, he said, man, you sound good, you can play, you're playing all the changes. He said, but. That's the best word you can hear when you're getting critiqued. You're good and this is great, but. Because normally, hopefully, what comes after that is going to be something that's going to raise you up even further. I'll tell you about a lesson I had with Dr. Barton that he probably won't remember, but I left there, he gave me a but. And it forever changed my life. But what he said to me was, Anthony, he said, Nelson, you sound good, but I need you to start thinking a little bit differently. When you see a C7 chord, I want you to say, what does that sound mean to me? He said, how am I going to interpret it? How am I going to interpret it going to this chord or going to that chord? I need you to start giving, right now you're giving me the basics. Get some other, I want to hear, where else can this go? How am I interpreting this sound? Okay, I never thought about that before.
Did a tear come to your eye?
Later it did, because I started to get what he was talking about. You know, that's why you hear me walking around saying, what if you put this sound with that sound? And you know, okay, how does that sound on the horn? Okay, you know, that's where you get all that stuff from. An idea that he sparked.
Let's talk about your early beginnings. How did you get into music? Just music in general.
I come from a musical family, so really a family full of artists. And for truth be told, I come from an artistic city that forgot that it's an artistic city. Plainfield, New Jersey, you know. We had Harlem Funkadelics is from there, Bill Evans is from there, you know, there's some great musicians. Charlie Person's family's from there, and then they moved to Newark. And you know, that's why I'm not going to say what Person would say every time he saw me. Hey, my nigga. I mumbled the Newark part. But, you know, so I was always around. Being in Plainfield, we were like still a hub. Because, you know, I had this great saxophonist who actually was the first cat that really made me say I could play all these horns, James Stewart. He lived around the corner from me and I didn't even know it. So I had him living around the corner from me and I would go over to his house. But even before them, there was my Uncle James, who was a gospel artist and he was a composer. And I was always around the music. So he would hold these elaborate Christmas gala events, and I remember sitting there one day watching it, and he had his creme de la creme arrangement was a joy to the world. To this day, I can vaguely remember it, but all I remember is sitting at Rutgers, because it was at Rutgers, like the big chapel on George Street. Not that you know this, but where this is, but it's in New Brunswick, and he would say, and I would go there every year, and I remember tapping my mother, and I said, Moms, when I grow up, I want to do what Uncle James does. And it was like, and I remember when he left here, man, I was still young, I was messed up. But he used him to plant the seed, and the array of sounds that he was able to get, and I didn't understand what I was hearing. It's like good cooking. It tastes really good. I don't know what they put in it, but it tastes really good. Man, how long did they let that simmer for? Man, it tastes really good. Man, I need to find out what they did. No, I'm not. I'm just going to go ahead and enjoy this food. That's how music is. I was just, it just permeated. It messed me up. And then, you know, oddly enough, most people don't know this, but before I started playing saxophone, I actually used to sing classical music. I was in a boys choir. So we were singing things like the Fauré Requiem and Mes Bas and Benjamin Britten's The Hymn to St. Cecilia and the Ceremony of Carols. It's like crazy to think that at 9 and 10, this man named David Lamb came to Plainfield, started a boys choir of mostly minorities, and in a city where we were the majority, but that's neither here nor there. He started this boys choir because he had worked for the Royal School of Music, King's College in Cambridge, England. He had worked for all of them. And now he came to Plainfield because he said, I want to do this close, because he's from Jersey City, or Bayonne, I think. And he said, I want to do this close to home. And so he took a job being the concert master at this church. And so he brought his love and his knowledge of the pipe organ and of English Cathedral Boys Choirs to Plainfield, New Jersey. I talk about being in the right place at the right time. Was I a great vocalist? I guarantee you I wasn't. But it made me a competent vocalist. It made me a competent. That was my ear training. We would sit up there, read music. We would pull out a score, and he'd say, "Here's your first note. Go." We were 9, and the oldest person was 12. And we're sight reading music from that perspective, because he taught us how to read music, and he said, "No, you should be able to read through all of this." That was the lineage. That was the standard, which seems not to be there anymore. But you can teach children anything. Sorry.
Oh no, that's good. You're talking good, man. That's I want to get one more of your compositions in, and we can continue on that line afterwards. What do you want to do?
Well, since we're talking about consider what we're talking about, let's do Ears to Hear.
Okay.
I was at some point, everything I write tends to just be strictly Bible, or about something I read. Like I'm a big Walter Mosley fan, and some of that stuff has crept into my, and Percival Everett too. Some of that stuff's crept into my compositions, but this is from Matthew 11:15, where Jesus is talking about how people they had met John, and they didn't want to receive him. He said, "Man, this guy came here being righteous, and he didn't hang out with the tax collectors or drunkards, and y'all judged him. I do all those things, and now you judging me. You're just not going to be happy." And he said, "Let those that have ears to hear, hear." So that's what this is, hoping that we all have ears to hear. And this is my love of Wayne Shorter in there too. Three string, Java, reds mostly. Sometimes rings if I need to make my life a little bit easier. This one isn't making my life as easy as I was hoping it would. Oh, there it is. 1, 2, 1, 2. I stole some stuff from you in that one.
I like this one, man. I like the other one too, but yeah, this is
This is the one where when I showed you one of my compositions when I first moved down here, and you said, yeah, well, it's cool, but you might want to think about how you arrange. You could put some bass lines in there, put some counter lines in the bass.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I was writing this, I said, I've been trying to come up with a line. Because I said, man, it just stopped.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't hear anything else after that. I said, boom, ding, doo-dee-ding, ding, dong, ding, doo-dee-ding. I said, oh, yeah.
Well, that's where I got that from.
Well, yeah, okay. We studied with the master. Yes.
He's the king of ostinatos, man. Yeah, so that was a beautiful composition. What did I want to ask you? This may be a little. I'm gonna ask you. How do you feel about the jazz scene or community today? I mean, do you have any, things that you?
Well,
you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's deep water. That's like Dave Chappelle said. Oh, here we go. Here comes the deep water. I have some very strong feelings, and I'm going to say them because what's the worst that's going to happen? They call me up for less gigs than they already do. I'm just saying. At the end of the day, the community has forgot that it is a community.
Mm-hmm.
So it keeps on coming back to this point. When I first hit the scene, there was some elders, because I came around Newark, New Jersey first. So we said Don Williams, great organ drummer.
When was it?
Okay, so I came around when I was in high school, so right around when I was 15 or 16 or 14, oh Jesus. We were talking like the 90s, like early 90s is when I started hanging out in clubs. And because my mother knew who I was with, she's like, go on, son, go on, because you don't want to really do anything else. And she would have been mad at me if I tried to do anything else as a career, because she knew it would have been a waste of time. But it's like the early 90s and around Newark, New Jersey. So I caught the tail end of the famous Peppermint Lounge, which is, you see great cats there all the time. Like Bill Saxton, who used to come down here all the time.
The mayor of Harlem.
Yeah, he's the mayor of Harlem. And there would be so many great elders, might not be household names, but in jazz and in the music business, they were stalwarts. They were like the guys that you would find. They're the Romeo Penquays, where they always showed up. They're the Andrew Whites, who is a household name, but I mean, because we talk about him all the time. We said, man, Andrew White. Matter of fact, I remember the first time I met you was at during this week at the National Black Caucus. It was you, Elvin Jones, Hank Jones.
35 years ago.
Hey, I ain't that old. And James King and the tenor player Darden from Detroit. I forgot. Yeah. Donald Waldron. Dear God, that was some. I just looked at my saxophone and said, one day I'll have a right to own you. Yeah, man. And so it was. All that being said, we had all these great musicians around, and they were so great, and they were so approachable that they taught us to be approachable. They taught us to have ears to hear. And so what happened was, if you weren't cutting it, they would tell you. They would tell you, okay, you're not cutting it. This is why you're not cutting it, and this is what you need to do to fix it. It was, you're screwing up. This is why you're screwing up. This is how you fix it. It was never just, you suck. It was, you suck with a solution. And that's the best way to put it. I mean, and so at some point, and we used to be open to it because my father wasn't around, but my grandfather was. He told me to respect my elders. And so the difference now between then is that we have more, I call it the tail end of a plethora of elders being around. And us, my generation, still respecting our local elders. I hate to say I call it the tail end of it because why some people, I'm not going to mention any names, are not beating down Nasser Abaday's door to try to work with him. Why they're not chasing after James, yeah, you know what I'm saying. Why they're not chasing after James King, and because you have these musicians that have said, why they're not chasing after Andrew White, say, hey man, can we get some time together? Why they're not shooting over here to find out what the saxophone really is? I mean, we used to do that, and the problem is that, I hate to quote, but I'm going to quote David Chappelle again. He says, how do you tell people anything when they think they know everything? And I mean, what are you going to do? This is not a music that started in 1965. This is not a music that started in 1975, 85, 94, 5, and definitely not 2005. So it has a deep lineage, and if you don't respect that lineage because you've been trained not to respect your elders, you're not teaching someone to respect what came before them, it's teaching them to disrespect what came before them. You're teaching them to, and sometimes when I turn on jazz radio, no offense to anyone, depending on where you are, at least I have to say this, depending on where you are, they do, well, when it's a fun drive time, everybody plays what everybody likes. No offense, but that's what we deal with. So there's a certain disconnect because we've stopped respecting our elders. We stopped respecting those people that have literally paved the way for us. And for some reason, people like myself, that if we say this, we're haters.
Yeah,
we're negative.
Right. I definitely agree with that. It's the times are different now because things are so readily available and people don't have to work for it. Work to get it. So it seems as if the new generation is like they can get it fast, so they don't have to go to the source. They can go to YouTube or something.
Think about it like this. When I first had my first lesson with Dr. Barton, he said to me, he gave me way too much credit. He said, Nelson, you're Michael Jordan and I'm Phil Jackson. He said, you can play? He said, my job is to make you play better. If I see something's wrong with your jump shot, I got to help you with your jump shot. And it was from that it was like problem solving. Now, how does that translate? The concept is that there's a lot of us that can cook well. Big Mama can cook. Sissy can cook. Junebug can cook. But guess what? It's my job. It's our job. It was our elders' job to take us from being cooks to being decent cooks to being chefs to being master chefs to create more cooks to create more chefs to create more master chefs to create more cooks to create more chefs to create more master chefs. And guess what? It's just that mirror that those mirrors that keep on going into each other. It keeps on bouncing. It's got to keep on going. And that's one thing. At some point in time, some elders have gotten annoyed. They said, why are we beating a dead horse? I've had them say this to me. One of the things I did when I first got to New York was some people referred me to Charlie Purcell. Charlie Purcell's big band does not work all the time. Matter of fact, I can count on one hand how many times I did gigs with them. But you know what we did do? We sat in that section and we learned how to read some difficult music, and he did not believe in tempo de lerno. So my eyes got quicker. And so because my eyes got quicker, and then sometimes he would play stuff so fast it was uncomfortable. So you had to get there early to get a chance to look at the music so you could figure out that phrase that you were struggling over. Oh, but then there's subs, so then you get to learn, wait a second, if one person is missing, now you have to pull that person up, and then you got to pull, oh, wait, now you're trying to hold everything together. And it's like a whole other experience where if you never play in a big band, if you never had somebody sitting next to you, like the greatest time of my life, to this day, was being the youngest cat in the big band. And I mean, mind you, I'm talking about when I first came to town, I got Bruce Williams, you know, said, you know, we got this, they had a gig in, Arlington band had a gig in Pittsburgh. And he said, well, Anthony has a tenor sax and clarinet. And he does pretty well with them. Get him to go do the gig. I got the gig. We went up there. I'm sure I made guys mistakes, but you know what they did? They leaned over to me and they said, "Hey man, I need you to play your part a little bit louder, so we can hear the shape." They said to me, if you don't miss the part, at least play the shape. If you can't play every note, play every shape. You know, give us the body of the sound. So then they taught me how to play in an ensemble, and I had to be receptive to that. Nowadays, if you tell somebody what they need to know, you're vibing them. You're a hater. No, it was like you hear the wrestlers talk. I mean, yeah, I'm a big pro wrestling fan, believe it or not, because it reminds me of jazz. You know what they always used to say? Protect the business. That's all they ever talked about was protect the business. So they didn't want people to know that they had this thing called kayfabe. They didn't want to open up the curtains to say, no, this really is a work. They didn't want people to know that. They wanted it to be, they wanted to have people questioning what it was. And so they would say, protect the business. Well, those older cats that raised us had that mindset, protect the business, protect the music, you know. And that's one thing that's been lost now.
That's some great thoughts on that. Let's play one more, and we'll take some questions from the audience, the studio audience here. All right, what do you want to do? Or you want to do
yeah.
You want to do this one? Okay.
Yeah. I want to play some flute. Because I haven't been able to play flute for since July 8th. After my bike accident, I've been able to hold this shoulder long enough to play some flute. So I've been desperate to play flute. I've even had to turn down some flute gigs.
Before we, you know what? Go ahead and do a commercial, man. Commercial.
Hi, I'm Anthony Nelson. Well, this is my latest CD that I've released, because there's another one in the can. First Organ Trio CD is getting ready to come out. This is a Swift to Hear, Slow to Speak. And you could, features Brandon McCune on piano, Kenny Davis on bass, Chris Beck on drums, UDC's own Bruce Williams on alto saxophone, Josh Evans trumpet, and oddly enough, this is the only CD that I've done that's had all originals. And if you know anything from this title, you can gather that everything is based off of the Bible. It's all based off of biblical scripture. Don't worry, it's not preachy. You can listen to it. You can be an atheist and and everything, and still say you enjoy it. You won't leave thinking about something else. Yeah, but we have these available. You know, I know I should do a better job at plugging, but I'm home, so I'm just happy to be here.
Really? Oh. What I walk around?
My cat.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Man, I didn't know you could play flute like that, though, man. I never really heard you play flute, really.
That's
I heard you play clarinet, and you know.
that was like the hallmark of my career. And one of the great injustices that I've done to myself. At some point in time, I came from a family. I hope they forgive me for this. I came from a family full of braggarts. And at some point in time, I found out that wasn't really profitable. People don't like braggarts. Although now it seems to be like the thing to do.
Yeah, man, check me out, man. No.
You know, yeah, I mean, you know, I get invited to more gigs than I've ever imagined before in my life. But yeah, flute is actually, I don't tell people this, it's actually my second instrument.
Okay.
Not
That's good to know.
clarinet, it's a flute. I spent more time on flute.
That's great, man.
I gotta tell y'all this. First time I walked into Dr. Barton's office, I sat down, and I'm sitting there, and you helped me understand the importance of this the other day when we were talking, because I never processed it like this. I sat down in his office the first time, and I looked up, and I saw this picture, I said, hey, is that Harold Jones? And he looked at me like I just picked the piano up over my head with my pinky. And he said, I think he said something to the guys, in 25 years, you're the first person ever sit down and ever point that person out. I said, well, I took lessons with him. Because, you know, and I paid $100 per lesson, so the one that I got a lot out of those lessons. You know, so flute was the one instrument that I fell in love with, and it was Eric Dolphy's fault.
Oh, yeah. Let's take some questions from the audience. Yes, Mr. White.
Yeah, I want to thank you for your presentation and to say that it's the first one that I've seen since I celebrated my 75th birthday on September 6th.
Happy birthday, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So I thank you so much. It's very enlightening to hear everything you're saying, and I wish you much success in your future career. Thank you very much.
Wow. He's gonna cry.
I just might try to hold it back. See, I don't understand. You know, there's some people that. Okay, there's this tenor player in the saxophone family or music family up in Newark, New Jersey, the Phipps family, and they messed me up. Billy Phipps, who's no longer with us, messed me up one day because I was doing a gig at Cecil's, and all of a sudden I look over and he's sitting at the bar in his tuxedo. He said, man, I said, man, Phipps, what you doing? He said, man, mind you, he's like in his 70s, you know, and he said, man, I heard you were here, and I drove back, I made a beeline here from my gig in Atlantic City because I wanted to come support my little brother. Wow. I was like, and that was like the elders. That's that thing I'm talking about, you know? That's that thing where they said, okay, look, I taught you. Okay, let me see what you learned. Okay, now I can take my hands off you, and then just, if I need to, every once in a while, just give you a touch on the cane.
Go back, son.
You know, say, did you think about this? All right, so why would you do that? You know, so that's what that, yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
One other thing, I met you several years ago, and the first thing you said to me was your mention of the 20-minute hour.
Yeah.
So wait a minute, I'm going to ask the question further here. Did you get that from Dr. Barton?
I cannot tell a lie. Yes.
You know where he got it from, don't you?
You.
He got it from one of my publications from 1977.
Oh. See, he always sourced his information.
And let me say, I have never copied any of his material and passed it out.
No, he did not, and I tried.
I always send them down to South Dakota Avenue.
So now I'm going to be heading down to South Dakota Avenue before I leave here. You can guarantee that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, because I learned it from Andrew Watt.
Any other questions? That's for circle here.
You want to let everybody know that you'll be in town for about another
Yeah, I'm really bad at this publicity thing, obviously. I'm doing a play. Reason that I'm here so comfortably and not stressing about being away from home is I'm doing a play at the, it's actually the Atlas Theater for the Mosaic Theater Company. We're doing the Devil's Music, The Life and Blues of Bessie Smith, in which we accurately, keyword accurately, tell the story of Bessie Smith. We have fun with it, but you know, the thing is that we don't realize how pivotal, I flute lit, my bad, how pivotal of a character she was on the world stage and what she brought to the music before anyone else was talking about owning a private jet, before Allyn or even James Baldwin or anyone else came out the closet about their lifestyles. She was openly black, bisexual, and a woman in the 1920s running her own business. And so, if you don't do anything else, come see that play. Because, be honest with you, DC, no offense to anyone else that might be watching, but the DC audiences have been the best we've ever had. Because you actually get it. Especially being on H Street. H Street ain't H Street anymore. But anyway, there's a Whole Foods where my Murray's used to be. I'm not upset about that. That's neither here nor there. But, you know, come see the play because we accurately tell the story of Bessie Smith.
Any other questions?
Can I share one? Oh.
Yes, sir.
Does the Mosaic Company have anything to do with the Mosaic record situation?
No, that would be brilliant if it did, though. That would be brilliant. I mean, but no,
Another company.
it's a whole other. Yeah, it's a Mosaic Theater Company. Yeah, right in Northeast. I do want to share this with you. I alluded to something about the butt that Dr. Barton gave me in one of my lessons. I think it was Close A, sort of this Close A 25 daily exercises. I think it was number 19. Yeah, the one Berg used to quote all the time. And I came in there, I was doing all the stuff he told me about. I didn't speed up, I didn't slow down, I didn't miss near a note. And I stood back at the end of it. I was like this. And I was like, yeah, give me my dad. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. He said, Nelson, that would be good for anyone but you. I was going to save this, so I said some words underneath my breath. I was like, what? What do you mean? What, for the glory? He said, when you're on stage taking a jazz solo, you give me 20 different examples of sound in one solo. Just then you didn't give me one. Do it over. And this time, think about what you're trying to say with it. It's like, oh man, there's another level? I was like, man, I thought I had this thing. There's another level? And so then all my students, I tell all my students that story. I said, you can physically know how to play the saxophone, but unless you have a voice on the saxophone, you're just blowing air and moving your fingers. So my students, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Before you finish, Anthony, I'd like to thank you, your colleague Bruce Williams, and all the other great young students that came through here, under Calvin Jones and before Calvin Jones, etc., for putting UDC on the map. You guys are some of the greatest musicians in the world, and we take credit for it.
And you should. Most definitely.
Truth be told, UDC saved my life. Because one thing I struggled with when I got here is that Bruce actually told me, he said, man, when you go down there, don't be acting like you're from New York. Well, I don't know how any other, I can't tell them to act like they're not from DC. But what happened was, all my life, I had wanted to be in the presence of someone like Jones. And I've been around some good musicians, but I've never been around someone that could explain it and break it down and make it plain the way you did and the way Jones did. Corey, man, I auditioned on piano for Jones to see about taking lessons. He walked out the room, and Corey comes in. Okay, so you're gonna be taking lessons with me?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
You walk out and okay.
you take him. The fruit isn't ripe enough yet.
Hey, that's what I started when I got here.
Yeah, right.
You gotta go through Corey, man.
Yeah.
You gotta, hey,
And so,
you gotta do that.
And so
Like nobody skips.
Yeah, I mean. So it was like here. It was here that whatever I thought I knew, I found out how well I didn't know it, and how much better I could know it, and how to go about finding out how to know it. Then you go back to that here's the here thing. There's what you don't know, find out what you don't know, how do you learn what you don't know, then how do you apply what you finally learned. Rinse, repeat, rinse, wash, repeat. That's what it is,
On that beautiful note, thank you, sir, for being here. Anthony Nelson, everyone. And again, swift to hear, slow to speak. Anthony Nelson, you can get it right here. It used to be $50, but now, today, a special price of $15. $15. All right. Thank you. Thank you so much for coming.